Repeated calls for help. This is body camera video of Lisa Edwards, seen here in green, being arrested by KPD. She was discharged from Fort Sanders Regional Medical Center on February 5th, arrested for trespassing after not wanting to leave.
Welcome everyone. I am Leroy Truth for Leroy Truth Investigations, and recording the police in the course of their daily duty, keeping them transparent and holding them accountable for their actions shall keep us free. Thank you for joining me. Disturbing news out of Knoxville, Tennessee. Knoxville, Tennessee police. And if you were disturbed in any way by this video, I encourage you to redress these officials. Knoxville, Tennessee. These cops here, what they did is they did a George Floyd to an elderly woman who was crying out desperately for help. She says she's having a stroke. She's at a hospital. And she was there overnight. The hospital discharges her. She doesn't want to leave. She's still not feeling well. Someone calls the cops. The woman called the cops, actually. The woman in distress called the cops. They thought the cops could help her. Don't call the cops. They just make things worse. The cops come. They are attempting to get this quite large and heavier woman into a police paddy wagon to get her out of there. And they can't get her in there. She is in physical distress. She says she is having a stroke. The cops have a mission. Comply or die. Comply or die. And this woman is at the hospital. She is begging them to bring her back in so her life can be saved. Cops have a mission. No, they were told she's been trespassed. She has to get out of there. They got to take her out of there at all costs, including death. And she actually dies. Let's continue. And I'll show you the video here. And it is, again, it's disturbing. The lack of humanity from the police to the public is alarming. You don't need training to be compassionate to a human being in distress. I mean, this is literally George Floyd all over again, except instead of the cops having a knee on the neck of George Floyd as he is begging for his life for, it was like, 8 minutes and something seconds, and no one did anything. No good cops stepped in. Nobody did anything to help the man from dying. Same with the woman, except she was already in physical distress, and the cops didn't believe her. They thought she was faking. This is so freaking wrong, ladies and gentlemen. Training doesn't help this. They have no humanity in them. A normal human, a healthy, emotional human would immediately let's get this woman back to the hospital. Even if I don't believe her, I'm going to err on the side of caution and get her the medical attention she needs. She's at a fucking hospital, for God's sakes. But instead, they believe in the Jack Kevorkian method of policeology, which I'll talk more when you see this video. Check it out.
Repeated calls for help. This is body camera video of Lisa Edwards, seen here in green, being arrested by KPD. She was discharged from Fort Sanders Regional Medical Center on February 5th, arrested for trespassing after not wanting to leave. In the video, we hear Edwards repeatedly telling officers that she's having trouble breathing as they're trying to make the arrest.
That woman is obviously in profound physical distress. She can't breathe. Look at her. And not one single freaking cop, and I think there were some paramedics there as well, did anything to help save this woman's life. She's going to be dead in a few minutes. And they don't give a shit.
But officers think she's faking it.
My problem with me is that I know it's all an act.
Oh, well, we all know.
Oh, yeah, because the cops are great medical doctors along with being scholars of the law and Constitution. Now they're suddenly great fucking medical doctors. Jack Kevorkian School of Policeology.
But unfortunately, if she goes over and can't breathe,
That act's going to turn into a problem.
Edwards insists something is wrong.
Get a stretcher?
Yeah.
Why we need a stretcher?
That's it.
Let's see, because she's dying, perhaps?
I can't breathe.
But
Sounds like George Floyd. Very similar. Here's secret code. When cops hear you say, I can't breathe, it means, oh, you can breathe. They're talking. Of course you can breathe. You're a liar. Instead of, that is a call for major physical distress call right there.
officers appear not to believe her.
Listen to me. This is the Lord's day. All I want to do is give me some coffee and some oatmeal. I'm not going to deal with your mess this morning.
One officer offers Edwards a cigarette as he digs through her purse looking.
The freaking cop, again, Jack Kevorkian School of Medicology, made up word there, and Policeology. She is in severe lung breathing distress, and he offers her a fucking cigarette.
For an inhaler.
You want a cigarette? No.
The officers finally get her in a KPD cruiser. That's where she became unresponsive.
I don't know if she's faking it or what, but she's not answering.
The officer then pulls her out of the cruiser.
Wake up! Hey!
Edwards was taken back to Fort Sanders, where she was placed on life support until she died of a stroke the next day.
If we would have done something like this to our child or something, we'd be arrested. We'd be locked up.
Exactly. Someone did something like that to their child, they would be arrested immediately.
Family members are outraged, wondering why she wasn't given a wheelchair, saying she's needed one since having a stroke in 2019, why she was only wearing hospital scrubs despite the cold temperatures, and why did officers think she was faking it?
There is not going to be any way that anybody is not going to look at this footage and think about if that was their loved one. And this is what was happening. It's like the worst thing that I've ever seen in my life.
The DA is not pressing any criminal charges. August Boylan says the family understands why, because the officers didn't do anything that directly resulted in her death, like using physical violence.
They said, like, use the force of physical violence. However, there is a woman in distress. Aren't they called first responders, not second responders, or third responders, or no responders? They were no responders. They are criminally negligent in their duty here, ladies and gentlemen.
But they say the officers were negligent.
I can't even wrap my head around.
Ooh, I'm not even a lawyer, and I know that. Wouldn't there be some criminal charges associated with that?
It. I just don't see how somebody could treat someone like that. Like they treat her like she's trash.
Boylan says the family is working with an East Tennessee attorney to see if a lawsuit is necessary.
And the answer is yes. A lawsuit is necessary. What incredible depravity. As the gentleman said, they treated this woman like she was a piece of meat. She was just something that they needed to get to comply or die. If someone's crying out for help that they're dying, and by the way, she had a stroke previously, so she fucking knows what it feels like to have a stroke. A cop should never make a medical decision. Someone says they're having a stroke. Oh, but it's against our will if she's having a stroke because I have to get her to do what I want her to do, which is to leave the premises. I was told she's trespassed, and now she's under arrest. They arrested her for trespassing. Woman at a hospital, goes to the hospital for medical needs. Discharged from the hospital, obviously too soon. Doesn't want to leave the hospital, not because the food's so fucking good, but because she's still in medical distress. And the thugs, which actually she called him. She thought she would get help from the cops. Case in point, don't call the cops. They are a hammer and everything looks like a nail. Even a woman dying of a stroke and clearly stating she's dying of a stroke, and you could see her body language as she was in great, profound physical distress. But they didn't give a shit. Now, I'm going to share the article with you here. She says the words literally, "I'm going to die." And body cameras footage was released in women's in custody death as well, which I will include a link to that in my description here for the full body cam footage. They treated her like she's trash, Lisa Edwards' family says. Knoxville, Tennessee. WVLT Gray News. The Knoxville Police Department released footage Thursday of several officers' interaction with Lisa Edwards, the 60-year-old woman who died in custody. You saw her alive just a few minutes previously. Police officials said that the 4 officers involved are still on administrative leave, means fucking paid vacation, motherfuckers. As an internal investigation is still going. Stop with the bullshit internal investigations. External investigations, I will repeat that again, external investigations are all that is acceptable. That investigation, where we will determine we did nothing wrong, will determine whether the officers violated police policy. How about whether they violated human decency and human rights, basic human rights and human caring and human compassion. Of course, that's not part of police policy. According to communications manager Skirt piece of shit Erland, Edwards was taken into custody for leaving, and updated message here. Hold on one moment here. There it is. For refusing to leave the Fort Sanders Regional Medical Center. And if you want to contact them, find out what the hell they were doing. Why did they discharge her? Why did they trespass her when she was in medical emergency? So there's more than one entity at fault here, ladies and gentlemen. Again, Fort Sanders Regional Medical Center. They are who I call Dickum McFuckulous. She had come to the medical center the day before complaining of abdominal pain and being diagnosed with constipation at Blount Memorial Hospital. Blount Memorial Hospital. After spending the night at the medical center, she was discharged around 7 a.m. on February 5th. They treated her like trash, Lisa Edwards' family said. After she refused to leave, hospital security called police to have her evicted from the property. Now, the woman didn't want to leave because she was still in medical distress, it seems. Makes sense. She's at a fucking hospital. The responding officer decided to take her into custody. Fancy phrase for arrested her. 60-year-old, completely defenseless woman. The responding officer decided to take her into custody after speaking with her. He, along with several other incredibly low IQ officers, then tried to put her into a police wagon, but decided it was too high off the ground for Edwards, who was in a wheelchair to get into. And by the way, since she had a stroke, she couldn't walk or had a huge amount of trouble walking. But cops somehow, they were trying to play Jesus. You are healed. You can walk. They can make the lame walk and the dead rise again. Except what they do, the opposite of what Jesus would do. Instead of making the dead rise again and come to life, they take the living and either through actual killing them or through a mission of helping them, allow them to die. A painful, agonizing, lonely death amongst evil men and women. Continuing. From there, the officers called in a patrol car, which they loaded Edwards into. On the way to a detention center, the officer in the patrol car responded to a reckless driver. Hey, I've got a woman in physical distress dying in my car. You know, instead of going to get a coffee at Starbucks, maybe I'll just respond to a call that came in of a reckless driver. While he stopped, he noticed that Edwards had become unresponsive. Oh, I guess maybe she was telling the truth. Maybe she was actually having a stroke. And I know I have an IQ less than that of a dumb snail, but maybe I should have believed what she told me. But no, he didn't. Continuing. While he was stopped, he astutely noticed that Edwards had become unresponsive, and an ambulance took her back to Fort Sanders, the hospital. From there, Edwards was placed on life support before she died. Do you think the cops were responsible? And any paramedics who were there that assisted the cops? I say yes. But a jury will never see the light of day of this, as you'll see in a moment. An investigation by the district attorney's office found that Edwards died of a stroke, clearing the officers of any criminal charges. Is this fucked up? Is our system fucked? Or what? That DA investigation also found that Edward had been having multiple health issues leading up to her interaction with the police, including a previous stroke. So why'd you take her from a fucking hospital? Dickum fuckulous? This is egregiously depraved behavior and complete non-caring of a human life. That woman deserved dignity and respect and compassion and the medical care she was begging and pleading for. But the cops refused it. And there are no fucking criminal charges being pressed? Not acceptable. Not on my watch, not on your watch. Continuing. The video begins by showing an officer respond to Fort Sanders Regional Medical Center. He speaks to Edwards, who was refusing to leave the hospital because she claimed she had a shattered ankle. She didn't seem crazy to me. She just seemed like in medical distress. And even if she was, and I'm not saying she was, I don't think she was, but even if they talk with someone who is mentally unstable, they need to have a lot more consultation with the actual doctors than just say, I'm going to rip this woman from the place that could save her life as she's in extreme medical distress. He calls a police wagon to transport her to jail after asking if Edwards has someplace to go. Several officers then try to move her into the wagon, but she falls multiple times and she is unable to get into the wagon, which sits high off the ground. That in of itself could have injured her numerous times. And they allow her to fall. For God fuck's sake. They allow her to fall. A woman in a wheelchair who claims she has a shattered ankle and is cold outside, who only has hospital scrubs, and her midriff scrubs are up here. She's not being given dignity, and she's freaking freezing. Continuing. At one point, an officer is heard telling Edwards, now you're starting to piss me off, calling her dead weight. It's all about the officer's feelings. She's doing all of this to hurt the ego of the snowflake little officer who needs a safe room and perhaps a hug, and maybe a paid vacation. Also during the interaction, Edwards claims she has breathing issues and repeatedly asks for an inhaler, which officers claim she does not have. At one point, an officer digs in Edwards' purse, presumably to look for her inhaler, pulls out a pack of cigarettes and asks Edwards, do you want a cigarette? The high IQ police officer, aka medical miracle doctor, when she has having trouble breathing, he has a brilliant idea. Hey, you can't breathe. You're dying of a stroke. You want a cigarette? Is it a Marlboro or is it a Camel? Throughout this entire interactions, officers are shown trying to lift her into the wagon, but she repeatedly falls. That's abuse right there. Right there. Repeatedly falls. She should not fallen at all in the police custody. She has been arrested. They are charged with giving her the proper care she needs to make sure she does not get injured and is treated with dignity. But cops never treat people with dignity. Once they got the cuffs on you or once they say you're under arrest, you're just a piece of shit, piece of meat, comply or die. The officers discuss this throughout the video, saying she's acting because they are great judges of if person is telling the truth or acting. And these are people who are legally allowed to lie during the course of their duty. They're experts in whether a person is having a medical emergency or not. Doctor, cop. It's all an act, one officer says to another. We all know that shit, the officer responds. But unfortunately, if she goes over and can't breathe, well, that act is going to turn into a problem if their officer finishes. That's why there are no good cops. Do you see one fucking good cop in this? Let's do the high math. 0. Any one of those cops could have said, Right now, we're getting her back into the hospital right now. She is obviously in medical distress. Even if I'm not sure about that, I will err on that she is in medical distress. And maybe my ego is hurt a little bit because I didn't get to finish my comply or die thing, but I'm going to make sure I do the right thing as a human being. Oh, but we need more training for our cops. No, you don't. You need them to actually be human, and they are not. They are soulless, evil. As Edwards lies on the ground outside the wagon, she is heard telling the officers, I am going to die, and I am going to have a stroke, she said. While Edwards is on the ground, the officer who drives the wagon is heard having a discussion with another officer. She is dying in front of them, ladies and gentlemen. No care. Saying that Edwards will not fit in the wagon, and that could have health effects. You think? She's saying she can't breathe. If she falls over either way and she can't breathe, he said, if she dies, that's on me. I'm not willing to take that risk, Officer Genius says. Well, then take her to the fucking hospital, asshole. Not a different police car. Once the cruiser arrives, the officers are shown dragging Edwards into the back seat. Again, no dignity as a human being who deserves respect and dignity. Failing to sit her up. When she asks to be sat up, an officer tells her, shut up! Directly after that, an officer mentions sitting her up in the back of the cruiser, but does not do so. And the DA says there are no criminal charges? That DA is a piece of shit as well. I'm going to find out who his name is so you can redress your grievance with him or her as well. Directly after that, an officer mentions sitting her up in the back of the cruiser, but does not do so. Instead, the video captures the officers passing around a can of Lysol to spray on themselves. This is so incredibly disgusting. This is something those soldiers in that country in Europe back in the 40s that started with a G, something they would have done. They must have gone to the same training camp. I bet they joked about how they were spraying Lysol on them as well. After the interaction at the hospital, the footage switches from the body camera to a rear-facing camera showing the backseat of the cruiser. Inside the cruiser, before it leaves, Edward is heard laying on the backseat saying, I can't breathe. Echoes of George Floyd and thousands of other people who have died in police custody, by the way. I can't breathe, she says. They are going to kill me. And asking to be sat up. And she was correct. They were in the process of killing her through not helping her. I'm a boater. I'm a passionate boater. I've been boating for decades, since I was a child. And there is a law in boating that if a boater is in distress, and I am going along and my boat is perfectly healthy and happy and fine, if I see a boater just in distress, I am required by law, not just by humanity, I would do it by humanity anyway, but by law to help that boater in distress. Whether their engine died, their battery died, bad fuel, or they're capsized. Cops don't have the same legal responsibility, let alone the human responsibility. It's insane. The video also captures Edward's labored breathing. This is while the officers are speaking outside the cruiser, hanging out, passing around the Lysol. Eventually, an officer does help Edward sit up, but directly before, other officers are heard laughing. What did I tell you? I bet they were laughing, joking about the Lysol and she's faking it. They should have been directly arrested immediately. Immediately taken to prison while they await trial on some type of murder charges. Continuing. On the way to the detention center, an officer is heard asking Edwards, are you okay? Her response is unintelligible. That's kind of a medical clue there, right, ladies and gentlemen? At this point, Edwards has fallen down again and repeatedly asks to be sat up. Edwards eventually slips from view, and the officer asks multiple times, are you good? And are you okay? No, you fucking lepton! Edwards doesn't respond. Shortly after, the officer pulls onto the shoulder of the interstate he is driving on and opens the back door of the cruiser. He asks Edwards, can you get up? Before shouting to the officers in the wagon who are following him. She's not responding. He then tells Edwards to sit up again, but she is not conscious. So once again, they are doing the Jesus version of rise, be alive again. Cops don't seem to have that type of training or skill. I don't know if she's faking it, the cop said, but she's not answering. He is heard saying as he lifts Edwards' head by her hair. And the footage ends. I don't know about you. I am outraged. I am enraged by this. And with that, my focus is always take action, peaceful action. Contact everyone here. It doesn't take a million people to demand that cops do the right thing, the hospital does the right thing, the DA does the right thing, and no one mentioned the fucking chief of police here. He or her are as culpable as having put these pieces of filth on the street. They all need to be held responsible. I'll put the description, links, different things I find in this video. And thank you to Heather Holt for sending me this video and article. We got to get this stuff out, ladies and gentlemen, and we have to not just get angry, but call and demand the chief of police, every supervising officer in that department, in Knoxville, Tennessee, the police department, people at the hospital, the administrators. How the fuck did they call her out, put her out on the streets? The security guards who put this woman out on the streets as well. Every level of government and the hospital failed this woman. They all got to be held responsible and accountable. Hey, if you feel so inspired to, put comments on their Facebook page. Call them. Email them. Peacefully, of course. This is Leroy Truth. Take action with your rage. Always peaceful action, but take action so we can get the accountability that humanity and human beings need to have, and we need to have in the United States of America. Please subscribe to my channel. Please share. I'm a new and growing channel. Please like, please comment. I appreciate you. Together we will make a difference. I'm Leroy Truth. And if you'd like to subscribe, but not just subscribe, if you'd like to donate to the cause, my links for my Cash App and my PayPal are in the description. Thank you very much.